Hi, my name's Dennis Hanwell. I'm the mayor for the city of Medina. Thank you for joining us for this program. Today's program is on landlord and tenant information, and joining me is Council at Large, Bill Lamb. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Lamb was the mayor, actually, when I started with the city in 1983. He hired me as a patrol officer, and I got my start in the city here, and I'm indebted to you for that, and I've been indebted to the city ever since for having the opportunity to work here for over 3 decades now. And Bill and I continue to work together on projects such as this for the betterment of the community, and we're glad that you joined us. The purposes of this program is to help inform and educate both the renters and the landlords on what their individual rights and obligations are in this agreement between landlords and tenants. And Bill, I know you've done quite a bit of surveys of the neighborhoods surrounding the square. Maybe if you could start with that, of what some of the concerns, some of your observations of those.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Well, I started in August going door to door, talking to people in different neighborhoods around town, really just to get a one-on-one impression of how they felt about their neighborhood. And first let me say that we live in a great community, and so many things about this community are right and are done so well. But neighborhoods, inner city neighborhoods, are, as the professor from Akron U said, typical of every community. They do begin to decline as people move out to new housing. And so what I heard from people in neighborhoods was, I heard a lot of good things, but I also heard about houses that were next door that had serious maintenance issues, houses that were empty, houses that they didn't really know what happened to them, or people that parked, they had parking lots in their front yards, and it just seemed to me that it created a situation that was not comfortable for folks that lived in neighborhoods. And my thinking is that a lot of us buy into a neighborhood. It's a big investment, and we spend a great deal of our life there, and you want to live someplace where it's a welcoming neighborhood and you're comfortable, you feel safe, and it's well maintained. And also, I think that the property values stay steady, or hopefully increase. And what I heard from some people was that was not the case. And so that's why I began that discussion through the fall, to see what people thought the problems were, what were the issues, and then how could we best address those issues. And that is it in a nutshell.
Okay. And then from those discussions, I know you and I then gathered a number of landlords to kind of get their perspective of what were they seeing, what were their concerns, how did they best think that the city, both administratively and or legislatively, could deal with some of those problems. And at least the impression I got from them is that they thought the existing laws for tenants' rights, landlord rights, as well as the property maintenance code, if a little bit more strictly enforced, could probably remedy most of these situations that we were seeing. Was that your take as well?
Yeah, sure. And I think to add to that is this. I mean, when I looked at it and talked to people in neighborhoods and had meetings, I looked at legislation. We actually looked at everything. We looked at all different forms of legislation. And so we were kind of looking this way. And the maintenance program for the city and the administration, is here, and professional organizations were looking at it kind of over here. But the interesting thing is our goal was right here. What we wanted to do is find a way to improve these, to make these issues better, to improve the neighborhoods. That was here. And so what I think is really important is, after you and I had the discussions and we met with landlords and I met with residents, and is what we did, which is what is smart and effective, is instead of going 3 different directions, we came together to go this way, aimed right at the problem, because it didn't need to be my way, it didn't need to be exactly your way or someone else's, but I think we came up with a good consensus so that we've got everybody's on board. We're all on board, and that's really the best way to go forward and have an impact.
Right. So then what we did administratively was decide that the building department with 2 full-time people was just having a hard time keeping up with some of these observations throughout the whole city, because as you all know as viewers, there's many neighborhoods, there's differences in each and every neighborhood, and for those 2 folks to be out individually and spot each and every violation was cumbersome for them. So what I ask is the patrol officers, because they're out and about on 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that if they had some spare times and we gave them a list of things they could see from the street that were violations of the property maintenance code, if they simply jotted down those addresses and what they observed and turned that into the building department, that would keep the building department from having to go out and individually make their own observations. So it was a better use of existing resources, not having to hire somebody else, and using our staff more effectively and efficiently. And I can tell you from being on some of those night shifts when things really slow down about 2 a.m., 3 a.m., you're looking for things to do. And so this is a good use of personnel that are out in case we get a 911 call or in case there's an emergency, but they're also using that time effectively and efficiently. The second thing we did is we took each one of these brochures we're going to talk about individually, and we scanned them into the city website and created a new tab on the city website. If you go to that, www.medinaoh.org, and then go to the residents tab, there's another tab under it that says landlord tenant information. And if you click on those, each one of these brochures we're going to talk about individually, it is literally that whole brochure copied over for you. If you'd rather not do it with a computer, maybe you're somebody that just has trouble with a computer and navigating the websites, things like that, you're also welcome to stop up at City Hall, because we have an adequate stock at our pamphlets. There's city information there, but there's also all of this housing information that we're going to talk about today. So again, 2 ways of making that, working on these issues. One is by using the police. The second is by putting the information out for everybody to see and understand what it is. So the first one we're going to talk about is the actual landlord-tenant law. And this came into effect in 1974. And there's been a few revisions. There's a whole Ohio Revised Code chapter 5321 devoted to it, but this is not a new law, obviously, from 1974. It's over 4 decades old, and it basically lays out the individual rights of the landlord and the individual rights of the renters, so that if a renter is having a particular problem and the landlord doesn't seem to be addressing it, it covers that within this pamphlet. And likewise, I mean, the renters have some responsibilities as well, some of which are that they're not to disrupt, the neighbors or the neighborhood. They're not to allow trash and junk to pile up. Many times the landlord may not be there to see it, but yet they're obligated under the law in Ohio to not do those things. So again, from the neighborhood perspective, this is very important that it's kind of a dual responsibility of both the landlord as the property owner and the renter, as well as the tenant. And the tenant also has quite a bit of responsibility there, because if the neighbor doesn't like the number of cars in and out, the neighbor doesn't like the parties they're having, the neighbor doesn't like that maybe it's all hours of the morning, that can be disruptive to life as well. So,
well, I think that's and that's one of the most important, I think, pieces of information. I think partly for the tenant, because tenants frequently are more short-lived in a neighborhood or in an area, and may not understand that if they have an issue, they do have some place to go with that issue to get it taken care of. Mm-hmm. And I think by the outreach of having that available at City Hall, having it online, can't do anything but help. I think even if you're not a tenant, you may have lived here for 30 or 40 years. Sometimes you don't know exactly where to go. Mm-hmm. What is the agency or who is responsible for for some service. And I think by making that available in a number of different ways should be really helpful. But you're right, landlords have rights too.
Yes.
And whether you're a homeowner, a tenant, a landlord, there's just a major, it should be an understanding of a responsibility that I live in a neighborhood. It's almost like sharing any living arrangement with other people. You want to take care of your space, but you also want to be cognizant and aware of other people have rights too, and you don't want to impose on them. And I think that that's important to say, because this isn't all a tenant issue, it's not all a landlord issue.
Right.
It's each can contribute in a positive way to both to the neighborhood.
The second brochure that we have talks about housing discrimination, and it's called Fair Housing and You. And I was not as familiar with this until I read up on it a little bit more, but it's not only state law, but federal law and state law both prohibit discrimination in housing, and that may be based on race, may be based on color, creed, sex, religion, belief, marital status, national origin, handicap, or even family status. So I didn't quite understand that family status, and then as I was reading it more, what that means in a nutshell is that a landlord cannot necessarily say, I only want single persons, or I only want husbands and wives and no children. Family status is, if it's available for rent, it should not be discriminated upon whether a person has or doesn't have children, whether a person is married or not married. So again, those rights are covered by that, and the purpose of that is that if you can afford it, if you have the proper credit, the proper job to pay the rent, that you should not be discriminated against because of any of those things that I mentioned. And of course, we as city officials and representing you as your government officials, we do not want to see anybody discriminated against or anybody taken advantage of. And again, part of the purpose of this show is to share so that we can all learn and understand what our individual rights are. And I'm not sure, Bill, while you're chatting with some of the folks, if any of those issues ever arose, or?
Well, it's interesting because there was a number of occasions where issues came up about number of people that you can have inside, how many people can be in a rental. And some people had a contract, and in a contract frequently the landlord has in the contract, you're limited to this number of people, and in some cases people had no contract. And in a number of cases that I saw, there was an issue between landlord tenant about who was in the building, and those things all need to be clarified and probably best clarified through a contract.
Yes. And
then everybody abide by the contract. But some of those issues did come up. Yeah.
Okay. Good. So the next topic then is housing and disabilities, and there's a separate brochure just on that. So again, similar to the fair housing, the housing and disabilities talks about folks with a particular disability, whatever that may be. They are permitted by law to make modifications to the rental unit. So maybe it's somebody that's confined to a wheelchair. Maybe they need to have the cabinets lowered. Maybe they need to have automatic openers, for the doors and things like that. The landlord is not obligated to pay for those improvements, but they also can't obstruct the person with a disability from making the improvements to where it's habitable for them. Another example that was cited in the brochure is maybe it's the way the payments are made. Maybe the landlord, for example, only wants to receive the payments in person, and it has to be at, by this date at this time. Well, persons with disabilities, in particular, if where the landlord lives is not handicap accessible, they may have some difficulty with that. So it talks about ways that it has to be made reasonable for them, be it the landlord come over, be the landlord meet them somewhere else, but there has to be some accommodation so that again, as you said, Bill, that the two of them can come together somewhere in the middle to where the person with the disability can continue to live there, be independent, which is what we're striving for, maintain their home, their dignity, and in the same respect, the landlord is trying to accomplish what they need, that they're getting their payments regularly, and that if the home is modified, that when that person then leaves, then the home is put back the way it was before they moved there, which only seems to make sense as well. So
that was one of the, and that I think, you know, when you and I started to look at things, I didn't know that. That was one of the that's one of the most interesting things I think that we came across is, and you want to be you know, welcoming to people that you want to accommodate, and I didn't know, you know, I didn't know until you brought that to my attention.
Well, and I know you were instrumental earlier this year, or maybe even late last year, we talked about the sidewalk program and having the sidewalks suitable, you know, for people, whether they have a walker, whether they have a stroller, whether they have a wheelchair. What we want to have is a city that's accommodating to all. And you know, sometimes those things that to us seem like a minor, you know, a little step or notch in the sidewalk, things like that, they're minor to us, but they're impossible for somebody in a wheelchair or walker to use, which again is not how we want to run our city or conducive to what we're trying to do. And then the last is if repairs are needed for rentals, there's a specific process laid out by law where the renter can put the landlord on notice and has to give them reasonable time to make the repairs. Now, reasonable time in the brochure, in the law, is presumed to be 30 days. And it's a bit complicated, and but it lays it all out for you here. They give you the sample wording. It's got to be mailed, certified mail with a receipt, so that you can show that the person actually received it when you send it. And it has to detail specifically, these are the repairs that need to be made, the date that it was sent, the date that they received it, and then 30 days after that, if it doesn't happen, the renter can then go to the court and show that documentation and ask that the court then get involved and intervene. And either they can do the court can do a number of things. One is they can hold the rent as opposed to the renter giving it to the landlord until those things are repaired, or the court can also order that those repairs be made within a specific period of time and then come back and prove to the court that those things were done. So again, people that feel kind of frustrated that, you know, I've asked my landlord, you know, nothing's getting done here, yet they keep cashing my checks month to month for rent. And we know that is not a large amount of landlords. The largest majority of landlords in the city, that, including the ones that we met with, you know, are very, very up on maintaining their property, on fixing things as they need to. But those others, there needs to be a recourse, a legal recourse for them. And fortunately, it's written right into the law what they can do to use those.
And you know, Mayor, that's important. It's important to understand that, because I did run into some people who didn't follow the procedure, had an issue. If you have an issue with your landlord, you want to get this information, follow the proper procedure. Don't not pay your rent. You know, I did run into some people that, well, I've been, you know, month and there's no improvement, so I'm going to withhold my rent. Well, that can just lead to an eviction.
Right.
And so it's well worth the time to get this information, and that way you can stay where you are and you can get the improvements that you need, and it'll be handled in the proper way. You know, it is a little bit complicated, but if you don't go that way, it can cause a real issue.
Sure.
And it is important, you know, what you just said is most landlords, including those that you and I met with, are responsible, and they take care of their property because they understand, first of all, they don't want people to live in property that's ill-maintained, but secondly, they want to maintain their property because that way they can charge rent and it's a decent place to live. And when I walked into different houses in different neighborhoods, I would look at some of those houses and I would think, would I live here? You know, do I want to live here? And truthfully, most of them, yes. It is these a lot of it is the outliers who are not following through and taking good care of their property. And that's kind of the conclusion that I think we came to, that many of the issues that we have with the housing issues were in these rentals, in these outlying rental properties. And in many cases, I think politicians never have to live with, you know, some of the consequence of what they do. But, you know, what we're doing, I think, shows just the opposite of really working to take care of these so that we ensure people live in, you know, where they are living is safe and well maintained and welcoming. And that is our, you know, that's our goal.
And Bill brought up a good point, you know, for the renters is, you know, the court may feel very much emotionally that, yeah, you're right, this, you know, this isn't quite right, but yet the court's required to follow exactly what the law says. So if you sent them a note, but you didn't get the return receipt to prove service, if you sent them the note and it's been 20 days instead of 30 days, although people can feel for you, including us, the fact of the matter is the law is so specific that if you miss one of those steps along the way, the court has no choice but to say it has to start again. You have to resend the notice, you have to do the certified mail, you have to show proof of that, and then they can take the right action. So it's not that the court is unresponsive, it's that the court is obligated to follow the laws just as they're written, not the way they would like it to be or wish it would be. And you know, that just as way of explanation for that. Now, kind of to wrap up then, we're working on the property maintenance issues a little bit more aggressively. We're making this information available on the city website. I think on your screen should be the city website, and then if you go to residents and landlord tenant information, that information will be right there. You can print it off right from your computer, or if easier and you would like to come in and get paper copies of each of these, you're welcome to do that. But I would like to clarify, and I can't stress this enough, is we are trying to share information with you, but sometimes legal advice is in your best interest, both as a landlord and as a renter. So I don't want you to take anything that Councilman Lamb and I talked about today and think that this is your legal direction of what to do. If there's ever any questions, these brochures have this number on it, but I'll share it with you too. The Medina County Legal Aid will provide you with legal advice without charge, at least advice. And their phone number is 1-800-998-9454. 1-800-998-9454. So if there's ever any question, you know, am I doing the right thing? You know, is this letter that I wrote, is this process I'm following correct? I would always recommend that you try to get some legal direction first, because as we stated, we don't want to see you go through the whole process and get to the end and find out, well, you didn't do this quite right, you didn't do that quite right, and now it's like starting all over again. Bill, in closing, I don't know if you'd have any?
Well, you know, I think what we've put together is a good solid strategy to address this issue. I mean, we've polished the focus on property maintenance. We have, you know, as you've just described, we have this, you know, really aggressive outreach, you know, to tenants and landlords so that they can understand their responsibilities as well as their rights. I think we've recognized that we don't want the issue to continue. The importance of neighborhoods, we want people to feel comfortable. We know the value of the neighborhoods, how important it is to the town as a whole. And as you mentioned, we work together, you know, to create a good sidewalk maintenance program that we haven't had for quite a while. We work together to fix all the streetlights in town. And we have agreed to set aside money to do curbing on intercity state highways. Which is all a recognition of the importance of maintenance is so important. And I think the bottom line is this, is we've always done things differently in Medina. That's the reason we have the community that we have. And most of that has come about by us working together. and recognizing that what we want to do is address the issue, not just go one way and other people go the other way, but work together so that we can really make a difference. And 50 years from now, people will look back and say, boy, we're glad they did that, because look at these great neighborhoods that we have. And I appreciate all the help from the administration, because I know how keenly, how important that is, and that we will get good results from this.
Well, thanks.
Yep.
And I'd like to thank you for joining us. Let me also just clarify, when we put together this strategy, it was to have a starting point. So this may not be the ending point. We may find that we have to make some further adjustments. We have to find some other method to share it with you, or maybe there is a need for legislation that we have not come across yet. And we're not closing the door on anything, but we felt we had to start and begin taking steps, at least with what we have in law, legislated already, and it doesn't make sense not to enforce what we have currently and then create new laws that we may or may not have staffing to enforce. So this is a good start in my mind, but I just want to share with you that we're open to continue, and if we have to make some adjustments along the way to continue to improve this and to secure your safety as a renter or your rights as a landlord, that we're about that as well, and we'll do all we can to support you. So thanks for joining us for this Landlord Tenant Information Show. We hope you found it helpful. By all means, if you have questions of Councilman Lamb or I, everybody in the city, both staff, administration, legislators, our emails are our first initial, our last name, at Medina, OH, all lowercase, .org. Or you're welcome to call City Hall. We'll connect you with the council office, with my office, and we'll help you in any way we can. Thanks, and have a great day.